Hello and welcome back, Sharkeers, to another episode of Deep Dives with Sharks. My name is Alex. I am the host here. I have not wandered off into the ocean to pet a shark. At least not yet. There's still time. It's another shark safety news episode, as that's where the rotation goes. Since most of you guys are here for the sharks, I'm going to do a few episodes with safety and news, a buffer movie review, aquarium review, different episode, then do a few episodes with three sharks. To be clear, there's going to be like one buffer episode. I'm not going to just throw a bunch of random episodes in the middle and then talk about sharks more, but something to kind of split it up. I'm trying to give everyone a little bit of what they like, unless you like all of it, then in which case, you get all of it, so win-win. But to stay up to date on everything that is Deep Dives with Sharks, hit the follow button on Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, Amazon Music, or anywhere else that you get your podcast at Deep Dives with Sharks. Now, we're going to jump kind of right into the shark that we have for today, which is going to be the Port Jackson shark. And these sharks are one that pop into my mind frequently, but I don't know a lot about them. They're absolutely beautiful, and I was really hyped to do this episode. So to start, the Port Jackson shark is part of the Heterodontidae family, which is hard to say, which only includes other bullhead sharks. So they could have just called it the bullhead shark family, but that'd be a little too easy. They typically grow up to 1.65 meters or 5.5 feet long, which is a little shorter than me, so I'll take that as a win. They have an interesting coloration that has a yellowish-brown base with brown stripes that form throughout their body. It comes in varying patterns. They'll also have some white on them, often around the ridges that sit above their eyes. They have a long, tall head that leads into a round snout. Their eyes are high set and have ridges that are placed above them that trail back towards their gills. Their pectoral fins lay flat on their side, and they appear to be rather large for their size. They have two dorsal fins, with the second being slightly smaller than the first. The dorsal fins also have spines on the front because they liked what the spiny dogfish was doing with that look. Porcupines are also a pretty big fan, so good to know they got a club. Now, their nose and mouth are rather freaky. I was not prepared for. Their nostrils face straight down, and in between them is a row of teeth. The front teeth are sharp, while the back teeth are more blunt, which helps with crushing. Their mouth is also about as wide. It goes pretty much about the width of their head, but the teeth are only in the middle, kind of in between those nostrils, and the teeth are just right there. It's weird. So straight up, looking at a Port Jackson shark from above, they look like a distinguished gentleman, and then you get a view from below, and it's the mouth of a clown from a horror movie. It's honestly terrifying. It's rather weird that they would go with this. I don't quite understand why they'd want to do that, but to each their own. Now, it's time to move away from the freakiness of them a bit, and also tell you that they are only found around Australia, but it is believed that they are also around New Zealand, although the only specimen that was said to be caught in New Zealand waters was not properly documented, and scientists cannot confirm a proper collection location. Australia is confirmed, New Zealand strong maybe, Canada, no, they're not really close to Canada. Sorry. But you can find them in the Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. In America, we have them in Newport Aquarium and the Tennessee Aquarium. I'd also like to real quick note that when I was looking this up, Google listed the Newport Aquarium under both America and Canada, and I looked into it thinking, oh, maybe it's on the border or something neat like that. No, it's in Kentucky, which isn't really near the border at all. So, it's kind of middle of the country-ish. Close enough to Canada, right? But anyway, back on topic. They're mostly found around southern Australia, venturing as far north as the York Sound, but marine biologists have labeled those reports as dubious, which is a pretty polite way of saying whoever reported this is lying. But they're usually found around Queensland, around southern Australia, and coming up into the central coast of Western Australia, which, another quick sidebar, I didn't realize y'all literally named the western part of Australia Western Australia and called it a day. Like, Americans saw we had a lot of space and went, you know what, Texas, California, Florida, Alaska, gonna need y'all to cover some real ground here. But Australians just went, yeah, it's Australian, it's Western Australia. You gotta respect it. That's actually pretty great. Although you should have put it on the eastern side just to mess with everyone. Be kind of funny. We're gonna go to Western Australia. Where is it? The east. Great. Anyway, sorry, this is gonna be 90 minutes if I don't stop. The Port Jackson shark is a bottom-dwelling shark and is often found in depths of less than 100 meters, which is 330 feet, for those of us who can't use the metric system because our country is weird. It's a triple shot at the United States, Liberia, and Myanmar, so let's get together, guys. Now, the Port Jackson shark will usually be in shallower waters of 100 meters, 330 feet or less, but can explore further into depths of 275 meters. Now, real quick to have a little fun, I'm going to pause here, see if anyone can convert that meters to feet themselves. Anyone? Bueller? Yeah, it's going to be 902 feet. So let me know if y'all got that in the comments, because I definitely didn't. Now, also, you could have paused it there to give yourself more time as well if you wanted. So maybe next time. We'll find out. But the Port Jackson sharks, they tend to like rocks around their habitat. Kind of like they really do like a good boulder, I gotta say. But they aren't opposed to sandy, muddy, or grass bed seafloors. They're not too picky as other sharks are. Now, during the day, these sharks will hang out in caves or other areas that have a flat floor shielding from the current so they can rest, because these boyos are nocturnal. Their nocturnal behaviors have been on display in captivity as well, as they were seen moving more and at the nighttime, especially the most between when it gets dark and midnight. But then after midnight, their activity would begin to diminish. So it's kind of like how humans wake up and we're a little groggy, but then we get a little bit more energy, and then once it hits about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, we tend to kind of crash a little bit and need a little pick-me-up or a little nap. Same thing happens with Port Jackson sharks. Their activity diminishes after midnight. Now, the Port Jackson shark also migrates annually, which is a little bit confusing for a shark that hangs out around one country and continent, which you got to put a little respect on Australia's name. It's both. So they migrate from the coastal waters to bays and harbors along the coastline. So not quite thousands of miles, but the salmon swim upstream, and that's a migration. So it's not so much the distance as much as doing it repeatedly at a certain time or for a certain reason. And these guys tend to do that for pupping reasons, which is neat. But something really interesting is that the Port Jackson shark migration was tracked using triaxial accelerometers. That is such a hard word to say for someone that never has to say that phrase. Triaxial accelerometers that also gauge the shark's movement. I was trying to figure out a great way to explain these in my own words, but looking on the Wikipedia, they kind of nailed it just by saying they're very similar to like Fitbits or smartwatches that track your movement the same way. So just imagine we kind of hooked up a Fitbit to a shark and called it a day. But it allowed us to track where they went, how far they went, things like that. Now, the Port Jackson shark have 5 gills, similar to many sharks. But for some reason, their first gill slit only has a single row of gill filament, while the others contain double rows. Researchers are not quite sure why the first has less. But the sharks also have a respiratory accessory called a spiracle that sits behind their eye. So that's where they tend to breathe, is behind their eye, which is interesting. But they also have lamellae, which help. It's where the oxygen goes to be used, essentially, which, to go a little bit more in depth about that, the lamellae use arteries, which I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. They use arteries, which carry blood away from the heart to the rest of the body to deliver oxygen throughout our shark. But these arteries push blood in the opposite direction of the flow of water. So when the water's coming into the gills, the blood is flowing in the opposite direction, which does not mean out of the shark. It just means like if the gills are going backwards, or the flow of water is going backwards, the blood is pumping towards the head, if that makes sense. Now, excuse me, the whole point of this is to help oxygen dissolve into the blood, because they tend to live near the bottom of the ocean. They like the seafloor. So if they're going to be staying on the seafloor, then they don't have quite as much oxygen as the upper water column. So they need to get as much oxygen into their gills as they can. So having this resistance, or keeping the water and blood kind of in the same spot, will help to get the blood diffused into, or the oxygen diffused into the blood, so that way the shark can then put the oxygen throughout its body. That was very technical and very sciencey. That might be a little bit complicated for some listeners, so if you didn't quite understand that, don't worry. Eventually you'll get to middle school, high school, college bio, and it'll click somewhere there, because it did not click for me until much later. But hey, we got here. I can explain it somewhat. That's exciting. But anyway, so another neat thing about the Port Jackson shark is that they can eat and breathe at the same time. Feet, many sharks cannot. You'll often see shark gills flare when they're eating, causing them to have to inhale and then eat. One of the greatest examples is great whites. When you see them eating on like Shark Week, you'll see them go to turn and you'll see their gills just flare out. Port Jackson sharks don't have to do that. They're just built different, and they can eat and breathe all at once. So they'll be able to eat and then hold their breath. Now, I do keep thinking about how I need to wrap this shark up because at this point in my research, I was on 3 hours of research and I was on page 4 already, which usually it's not that much. But there's so many cool things about this shark. And with that being said, they have a J-shaped stomach. So like the letter J, it hooks. Now, food can pass through really easily, but if something that is not food tries to pass through, the shark is able to either cough it up, or if they just can't get it out, they'll just turn their stomach inside out casually, you know? Which I wonder if it's kind of more like when you're surprised by a burp that comes out, or if it's like on command. Just, oh, excuse me, I appear to have turned my stomach inside out. Which it's not really great for dinner parties. But I mean, even if they did that in front of you, you'd really only find sea urchins, mollusks, fishes, and other crustaceans because that's pretty much their entire diet. Now, their favorite, though, is black sea urchins. They have been seen to go a little bit nutty about those, so they do like black sea urchins the most. Their sharp front teeth help to catch and eat fish that have the little softer bits, while mollusks and urchins that have the harder bits get worn down by the blunt back teeth. So their teeth are designed to help with really all of their dietary needs. Adult Port Jackson sharks often group up to rest in caves, often based on their size and boys' club versus girls' club. But the kids aren't all right and prefer to be solitary because they have trust issues or something. I'm not quite sure. But evidently, juvenile Port Jackson sharks can be trained very easily by aquarium staff in captivity, as they respond well to LED lights, bubbles, and sounds. So, really, any stimulus they'll respond to. Now they also learn by watching other sharks. So I'm kind of disappointed that they aren't near the open ocean because I think it would be amazing to see one of these goofballs breaching after watching a great white do it. It'd just be kind of funny, just seeing like a little small guy just flopping around. But anyway, now these sharks also pose no threat to humans, although they should be absolutely feared because in 2011 a man was bit by one and it was so horrible. The shark was latched onto his calf, and the man swam to shore, wasn't even bleeding. The teeth did not pierce his skin. They're pretty harmless, and humans tend to not bother them. They're really only caught as bycatch, and not caught for sport or really anything else. So they sometimes bite us, very rarely, and when they do, they don't really hurt. But don't go mess with Port Jackson sharks. There's going to be one that'll mess you up. Now, also because of humans and Port Jackson sharks not really beefing, they're listed as least concern. But they do face a high egg mortality rate. They do lay eggs, which is really cool, but evidently as high as 89.1% of the eggs won't hatch. And it's kind of a sad thing to end on for the Port Jackson shark. So I feel a more fun thing would be that their eggs are spiral shaped. They kind of look like a big old drill bit. They're just a big spiral, so they're kind of fun looking. So definitely worth looking into that. But that is what I have for the Port Jackson shark. Of course, if you have any questions, any corrections for me, or anything of that nature, you can send it over to me in any of the DMs or in the comments, anything like that. But moving on to our safety bit, we have what if I find a shark egg, which this information I got from sharktrust.org, which is an amazing resource. Now, first off, you're more likely to find a shark egg during low tide. It's often when many things get washed ashore, but you could still find one during high tide. Now, the website noted that you should let someone know where you are going and what you're going to be doing, especially if you're going shark teeth or capsule hunting. It's just a great idea in case something goes wrong. Nobody really knows what could happen. Me and Goalie tend to like to walk on beaches at night. And when we were in California, we were walking over on Laguna Beach and did not realize that when high tide comes in, that the water can go up to the entire beach. And thankfully, we noticed that the rock we were sitting on, the water was getting closer and closer to it. And figured, we should probably get out of here before we suddenly get trapped here. It's a good idea. So thankfully everything was okay because we were paying attention, but if we weren't, we could have gotten stuck there and then someone might have needed to come save us or something like that. Not pretty great. So just make sure people know where you are, so that way if something happens, they can come find you. Now you'll also want to have a stick or some kind of poker just to ensure that you won't get bit, stung, aggressively cuddled by something that didn't want you to move its hidey little seaweed spot. It's better to be safe than sorry. You're also most likely not to realize that you are looking at a shark egg, as they're meant to blend in with their environment. So if they're hooked onto that seaweed that washed ashore, it won't have a quest marker over it with the mission Save a Shark and a timer. It'll most likely just look like another leaf, but in a Port Jackson shark's case, it'll have a really twisty leaf to it, so at least a little bit of distinction there. Now, it could also be an empty egg case, so you'll want to check to see if there's an embryo still inside. You can do this by having really any light source nearby, so if it's the daytime, sun works great. Having the light behind it helps a lot, but sometimes it's really obvious that there's an embryo still in there, so you don't need like a high beam searchlight to look for it. Sometimes you just simply need to shine a phone light behind it, and then you're good. If it's empty, you can put it back where you found it or something like that. Some people feel like collecting shark teeth is wrong, and shark egg casings as well. I'm torn because I have shark teeth that I found, but I don't take shells home or anything anymore. I'm just not that into it. Uh, I also just want the teeth, and none of the sharks near me lay eggs, so I'm not going to find a case, or I'm not going to just grab a baby hammerhead and take it home. That's a horrible idea. Now, I did try to look into it to give you guys more information to figure out what to do with a hatched egg, and Google keeps calling me a piece of garbage for taking an unhatched egg home, which I have not, and isn't even what I was asking. So now all my search results are, how could you, you absolute monster? And I don't need this. So if anyone would like to enlighten me on if it's okay or not to take sharks home, shark eggs, not sharks, don't take sharks home, shark eggs home, feel free to do so below. But also I wanted to point out that while doing the research, my impulsivity had gotten the best of me because I got caught up on a bullet point on the website, did not finish reading the article before I started looking into other things, and started being called garbage by Google, only for the next bullet point directly under the one that I got stuck on to say, empty egg cases are not known to have any secondary purpose. They don't break down to form sand or offer habitat, as some shells do for hermit crabs. They also don't decompose to form part of the strand line. Take them home. I don't care. I hate it here. I swear, I spent like 20 minutes Googling, are you allowed to take hatched shark eggs home? And the entire thing is like, do not take animals from wildlife. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to do that. Why are you yelling at me? So yeah, I guess it's okay. I don't know. Don't try to do your own research as well. Don't base everything that you do off of what I say. I try to give good information, but I probably get some of it wrong. So please also look into it if you're thinking about doing anything like that. But I thought it was funny. I got yelled at by Google only for the next bullet point to give me my answer. But back on topic. If you are to find an egg case that is not empty, you want to try to get it back in the water. Now, this does not mean you want to absolutely throw it as far as you can. There's a good chance it's going to get damaged or simply wash back ashore again. You're not Jaden Daniels throwing a 75-yard bomb to Terry McLaurin. It's just a little shark, and it's delicate. So you want to place it past the waves and anchor it to something. Now, most eggs aren't going to have too many things you can utilize. You just got to kind of put it somewhere, but skate eggs, which look similar, they have horns on them, so you can weigh it down by the horns. Cat shark eggs tend to have these long thingies on them called tendrils that you can just tie to something, but others, just wedging it gently between some rocks will do. Now, you need to be careful not to smash, squish, or damage the egg in any way, as they are malleable, so they can be a little squishy and a little movable, pliable, anything like that. But they're kind of similar to like chicken eggs, how they're rather fragile. So they're not made of steel. Chicken eggs break pretty easy. Shark eggs can also break rather easily, but a little bit harder. Now, you don't have to worry about other sharks being territorial of their eggs like birds are. Sharks often have babies and then they go about their lives without the baby. It happens. They just abandon immediately. Now, many sharks like being in the same areas as their offspring, but would definitely fight their own child if it meant that they can get the food that the kid was going for. It's a me versus them mentality. Now, they won't come bite you because you're holding an egg. It's not like a bird's going to attack you or anything like that, or chickens peck people when they're trying to grab their eggs. Sharks don't care. Take the egg, eat it, they don't care. Don't eat a shark egg. It would not be good. Now, something to consider is what is around where you're going to put this shark egg. Now, of course, you don't need to find the most perfect spot ever. Sometimes it'll do. But you want to find a place where it'll be wedged nicely, not come loose too easily, but also make sure that you don't wedge it in such a way that the baby shark can't like escape and then you're kind of stuck between the egg and a rock. But also as well, you want to make sure that the egg isn't going to get dislodged and washed back ashore. And you also want to see if there's a horn shark nearby that's just eating other shark eggs. They do like to do that. I probably wouldn't leave the egg in that buffet. That's just not going to be helpful. Now, I'm not saying go on a whole cross-country adventure to put a shark egg back in the water, but I mean, hey, 30 feet a different way. right? But you don't want to put it somewhere where it could get damaged or where it could get washed away. You want to try to anchor it down nicely. But of course, once again, if you're trying, you're doing your best, and that's all we ask. Now, I do mention this every safety segment, but don't put yourself in danger to save a shark or a shark egg. If it's low tide and you can get the egg into a nice outcropping without having a wave slam you into a rock, go for it. If it's hurricane force winds, it's downpouring, there's 500-foot waves, don't go try to save a shark egg. That's in God's hands at that point. Also, if you can see a shark egg in those conditions, might as well just quit your job. You're a superhero at that point, and the world needs you. So go use your supervision to go save somebody, all right? I don't know how you'd see it in that condition, but my goodness. But one thing I want to end on here is that Shark Trust is a great resource to use and learn more about sharks, how to help them, how to protect them around the world. I highly recommend checking them out. And any other source I've used for these safety segments, all of them are pretty great when it comes to answering your questions and going on with that. But of course, we've come to the long-awaited part that I have not talked about in a long while. It's the news. So the first news story that I've got two for you today. The first one is about cuttlefish, and that the cuttlefish ink may overwhelm sharks' sense of smell. And this is by sciencenews.org. So we're getting sciencey today. Sharks like eating cuttlefish sometimes, and the cuttlefish got pretty tired of it. Now, their main defense is to shoot ink at its attacker, similar to how squid do. But their second defense is having a massive bone that takes up, all of their body. But sharks still get through. Technically, it's a shell, but whatever. So the cuttlefish realized they have to evolve to get these sharks away from them, and decided that they're going to have ink that is full of melanin that binds to smell receptors in a shark's nose. Now, the smell receptors are what grant us the range that we can smell. Now, humans have about 850 smell receptors, so we can smell a lot of different things. Fun fact, humans can smell rain and wet dirt the best. Don't know why, but we can. It's from when we were nomads and we had to figure out where water was. Anyway, I could go into a whole rant about this, but I'm going to stay focused. So we have 850. It helps us to smell a lot. But sharks, they have 43, so they get a lot less. But the scientists believe that these are fine-tuned for things such as blood, stress signals, other things fish have, and also just kind of for survival. So they can also smell things that tell them they need to get out of there immediately. Now, the melanin in the cuttlefish ink binds to receptors blocking other scents. But on top of that, there's a chemical compound in the ink that makes sharks run off. So having that fine-tunedness, kind of a disadvantage. Which means that when the shark can't smell other things at the time and they can only smell the smell that they don't like, then it just kind of causes them to keep hightailing it away from the cuttlefish, which is a pretty smart move by evolution there because that just keeps going. Which that also means that this compound could be used in shark repellent or to help keep sharks away from certain areas, although that is rather controversial because it can disturb the ecosystem by driving sharks elsewhere, and more testing would need to be done to see how it could be used, if it can be used, without damaging the entire ecosystem. Because they also don't know how it'll affect other fish too, so something to think about. But the next one that I have is largest shark ever tagged by a research group named Contender is swimming off of North Florida, and this is reported by CBS News. Now, one thing that irks me about these article titles is that they tell you quite literally everything in the headline. I don't know why they give you the whole story in the headline, but anyway, I'm not a journalist person, so I don't know. I just talk about sharks. Now, the largest shark ever tagged is hanging out in North Florida. Contender, a male great white shark, was tagged by OSearch on January 17th, 2025, around southern Georgia, when he decided that the coast was lame and he wanted to head out to see a bit more. But then realized he didn't buy his lady shark some Mickey ears, so he had to come back this way because, Disney World's right around the corner. Might as well head that way. Now, Contender is 13.8 feet, which is 4.2 meters in length, and about 1,653 pounds, which is 749.8 kilograms for the weight. Now, OSearch was able to take some samples from Contender before releasing him. This will help to see any genetic code, anything like that, any DNA to see possibly how he got so big, how healthy he is, etc., etc. But on top of that, the tag that they put on him will last 5 years to track his location, but unfortunately not many other metrics on him. Now, you can also follow along with Contender. You can download the OSearch app or follow it online, and you can see other sharks, sea turtles, whales that they have tagged. I had a favorite shark. His name was Pico. He was a mako, and that was tagged near Texas. Now, I must emphasize the word had, as I still love him very much, but his tag has not pinged since 2021, and that was a Z ping, which means that it communicated with a satellite, but it couldn't provide a location. So I hope that the satellite tag just ended and he's out there eating lots of yummy things and doing all the great breaches. But that's what I have for this episode. I want to thank you all once again for listening and being here and hanging out. Comment or DM your favorite shark fact, and I may share a couple of them on the start of the next episode because I usually start my episodes by rambling about nothing. So might as well share some fun shark facts. You can also follow along on Instagram for more updates. I tend to update that one the most. Deep dives with sharks, but of course you got Twitch, the tap link, everything else that you can utilize to make sure you find me wherever. You can send in any comments, questions, or anything of the sort. And of course, give us a rating on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you listen to your podcast, because ratings, comments, everything of the sort do help to spread this even more. So I thank you all for hanging out, listening, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.